last lecture we discussed about filling the gaps in a historic settings, how we will design the new buildings, and we also talked about, apart from the designation of the historic areas and apart from special bylaws, we also need to study that if the new buildings come up, taking the guidelines for this analysis of the various attributes we have discussed, one has to also study that what will be the impact of this new structure in that historic setting. And where we are talking about the heritage impact assessment, basically in this lecture we will talk about the visual impact assessment, because heritage impact assessment will have a much other aspects also, much more broader definition and areas. We discussed that there can be the different ways of having a dialogue between the old and the new, but that can only happen not only by bylaws, but also by the analysis of the different attributes and a very intelligent way of stitching together. This is an example from the visual impact assessment from Bhubaneswar Old Town. If you remember, we have discussed that how Bhubaneswar Heritage Town, the old core, has been designated in the comprehensive development plan as a special area, because it also does not only have the various ASI structures with their each one has their own regulated zone and the prohibited zone, but it also has another area, a larger area, which is own distinct activities, character and other. And again, this character is not only one uniform character, there are also sub zones with various types of activity. So, here first of all, there has to be a separate bylaws for that area. It can't be at par with the rest of the city, but then also if the new structures come up, then one has to study that what will be the impact of this structure. And when we are talking about the visual impact assessment, we have to see that that is not only a blank rule, we have to see that what we are trying to achieve. Now, we have discussed in Toronto, if you remember, the visual integrity scale, and also is not only just looking at the elevation. When one moves in this city, if there are certain important landmarks and how these landmarks, for example, here is the Lingaraj temple, which is very important. Wherever you go, the Lingaraj temple structure is visible from that area. So, what has been done here, from the various cones of vision, the streets have been identified, that how the Lingaraj temple is visible. For there, this cylindrical area, what you can see is that is actually representing the Lingaraj temple, and it is visible from the different areas as you proceed. And what is done here, that from identifying the various visual cones, it is tried to find out that if we have to increase the height, what will be the impact of increasing the height on this visibility of a very important landmark of that area. This is how this exercises has been done, and before framing the bylaws, one has to understand and take this type of an exercise. This is again continuing with that, because the changing streetscape what is happening, it is happening slowly, but it has there are certain regulations on the height, but one is not only the height restriction, it also one has to see that if the new structures can come up, there may be some structures which are dilapidated. It is not that all structures need to be preserved, there may be some listed structures of different grading. So, then one has to talk about. So, where it has been done, that area of the visual linkage has been identified in that area, and by giving the different heights and different setbacks, a lot of simulation can be done, that how from the different access points, the major access point, how the visibility of the Lingaraj can be there, and that actually to ensure the visual linkage, one can sort of devise a bylaws for the special area, and these types of exercises are required before framing the bylaws. I will take another example. This is from Kanchipuram, and Kanchipuram, this particular street, it has again a lot of temples. It comes within this structure which have coming is the regulated zone, which is that 200 meter, 100 plus 200 meter area. And what is happening there, that initially historically many of these structures were like this is a structure which was there, and actually these were this what you see, the traditional structure. So, these were actually what was the prevalent type of structure, and over the years people feel like changing the structure, and as you can see that the structure has come up. Now, because of the AMRITSAR Act, that if a person, however small that house is be, that if it is within the regulated zone, it has to come to the National Monument Authority or through the competent authority for approval, and now the rules keeps on changing. Probably it's the competent authority is can give the permission. Now, once giving the permission in such small structure, what happened is a simple man who is trying to demolish his house and get some money and do a double-story structures. Now, you see the total effect of that. If all these houses start changing, and quite a lot have been changing, and as a whole this regulated zone will lose its significant character if it has got any. It has, and this particular structure we see here, it has been preserved because that owner has converted into, on his own initiative, a traditional museum and other things, but most of the structures are gone. Now, the question is that if what can be the guidelines for that area? We can give a restriction on the height and other thing, but what is happening is the entire fabric is changing because the color, the visual details and other. So, what we have tried in this case, that taking the inspiration or analyzing the attributes of the traditional structure, can some guidelines be given that okay, let him demolish the old structure because it is not a listed structure. Let him build a two-story structure, but the two-story structure, the design usually comes is a usual design, or it does not have any character. So, let us see that what we have tried, so that this type of some sort of a guidelines can be given. I am not showing you that several options have been tried. So, what was done here in this case by giving the guideline, that these traditional structure has been analyzed. It is a single story structure, but what are the attributes, what are the proportion, what is the relationship between the void and the solid portion, what are the details, the columns. This has been analyzed in a great detail, and a lot of options were tried, and as a result what has been done is that taking this person's requirement, a new design has been formed, and taking the design and understanding the traditional structure, new 2 or 3 options have been tried out, and this is one of the option. What you can see that even if it is double story structured, it retains a character. It is not totally entirely sloping roof, but sloping roof. Some of the column details have been the color of the columns, the color of the building. This has been found out, and a demonstrative example to show that how it can be designed within a certain guidelines, and few such examples were given, which forms a ready reckoner for any new building for in that area. 2-3 options have been given. So, these are something which is very much required to show to the people as a what you call a toolbox, heritage toolbox. And this has been continued for another street, where as you can see that in this street, this structure has come up and these also structures come up. It has some sort of a sloping roof around the another thing. We are trying to understand that if these type of heritage structures were there, what can be the alternative, what could have been the alternative to contribute some. So, we sort of started assuming that there is a void here. So, what can be a new structure which has come? So, different options were there, and this type of a sort of gradual story wise extension or setback, and with some sort of a sloping roof, and then you can see that breaking the facade into a smaller windows, taking the cues from there, and also in terms of the color, which are the color, giving a color basket, color options which are possible, which are not possible. That can be ensured through the guidelines, and if this sort of, even this is a small structure, if this type of guidelines, and of course it cannot be a same design, there has to be a variation option. So, I am saying these are the guideline showing with through some demonstrative example what are the possible, and these that way the area will change, but slowly and not so drastically what generally happens in such regulated zone or historic area. So, this is what is required when you are talking about, and it has been tried in Kanchipuram in the regulated zone, which is out within the temple boundary, temple vicinity. That how the massing can come. It's not that it's not being tried in India. This is quite a good example from Amritsar, where under the Hriday project, entire street which is has been converted, and as you can see that there is some facade renovation has been done, some sort of a colors, and also what is important is that here a new structure has come up. A 3-story structure where there is a McDonald's sign, a very small one, it is not. So, there is a certain you can see some guidelines on that what will be the signage system, the design and other, and then the paving pattern is becoming a pedestrian area and a mixed area. So, it becomes a very this is not easy to do, but even this much can really establish a distinctive character and increases its attraction, the quality of the space, the ambience of the space, and helps to retain the significance of that area. Of course, this has to be combined with the activities of the people, it has to be done with the stakeholders, there has to be a special incentive, some programs have to be there along with the guidelines and the bylaws. So, this is possible, it has been done, and I think I quite appreciate this what has been shown in our country itself. So, this is what this you can see that this is an old historic area where new buildings are there of different color, the old buildings are from different period, the flat roof, the sloping roof, with other, and this is what is teaching, that it is a weaving together the old and the new, where the old and the new can have a dialogue together, and this can be done again and again. I am saying with the designation of the heritage zone, it cannot be applicable anywhere, everywhere. First we have to identify what is that heritage zone, which are the areas which should be designated as a heritage zone. This should be a part of the comprehensive development and then the regional plan of that area. Not only the visual guidelines or the bylaws and the regulation, what will be the activities, the traffic system, the infrastructure, these also has to be taken into consideration, and of course, these what will be the if the new buildings have to come up, what will be the not only the bylaws, what will be the design guidelines, that and how we do the visual impact assessment of that area, and what are the incentives or disincentives also sometimes can be thought about to make this happen, and it has to happen a case specific. There are these process which have talked about in a nutshell, but this process may be the same, that the process of analysis and other thing, but these has to be a very case specific, area specific guidelines, and one can also give, in addition to the bylaws incentives, one can give a toolbox showing pictorially, graphically that this is possible, this is not possible. In addition to that, there has to be a strong review committee, the people who can sort of say that okay, these are the things, but at the same time too much of restriction is not possible. I have seen an example where too much of restriction actually does not allow the architects to think creatively. So, the architects should have the scope of thinking creatively, but they have to design in a much more sensitive manner, and it is possible, and when it is possible, it not only retains the heritage character significance of that area or identify that area, actually it helps in the economic generation of that area. It makes such areas into a more attractive place to work, to stay, and it is also important that people visit that area. So, it is not only for the tourists, and these continue to live through, and this is what is the purpose of what we when we call integrating conservation with development. Now, when we are talking about integrating, we have talked these 2 lectures, we have talked about infill or the new buildings in the whole sitting. And we have been talking about the activities. Sometimes it happens that many of these structures, it has outlived its own original use. So, we have to think of how we have to, if we not only just as a facade or an enclosure or a structure, but we have to think of that what will be the use of that area. So, in our next lecture, we will talk about rehabilitation or adaptive reuse of structures or adaptive reuse or rehabilitation of areas which have some significant characteristics. Thank you.